Bucknutters. Welcome into the Morning Five on Wednesday, August 20th, 2014. I am Dave Biddle. I'm joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendale. Bax, we learned yesterday afternoon that Braxton Miller will miss the 2014 season. After re-injuring his shoulder on Monday, Ohio State finally confirmed the news last night. And now we've learned that Dr. James Andrews will perform the second surgery on Braxton in the coming weeks. Miller says he plans on returning to Ohio State as a fifth-year senior in 2015, so that's good news. One thing that's clear to me, Bax, this was never minor shoulder surgery that Braxton suffered, which was the bill of goods we were sold by Ohio State. And I think whether you're talking about a baseball pitcher or a football quarterback, there's no such thing as minor shoulder surgery if it's your throwing arm. But Miller's injury back seemed even more serious than we were led on to believe. Putting that aside for a moment, I want you to address that. But first of all, I want you to give your reaction to the Miller news and then address anything else you want to address about that.
Well, obviously, it's a huge blow for Ohio State. This is a player who was in his third straight year as the preseason Big Ten Player of the Year on offense. He's the quarterback who led Ohio State to 24 consecutive wins. He's one of the most dynamic runners in college football. We were all hoping he would take that final step forward, and if he developed as a passer like we were hoping, he may have been pretty much unstoppable this year. So no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's a huge loss for Ohio State. That said, I feel really confident about this team still. We're not a national championship favorite anymore. We're not the clear favorites in the Big Ten, but this team still very much has the ability to win the Big Ten this year. This team still has the ability, if they win the Big Ten, to be a playoff team. So, a lot of people are assuming the season's over, but I remember a scrappy little team back in 2002 that had a new quarterback in Craig Krenzel who'd only beaten Michigan the year before, and that was about all he had on his resume, and a team that was coming off of 5 losses that won a national title. So I think people want to write this team off with that in memory. Think twice about that. I'm not saying we're going to be a national title team this year, but you can never write off Ohio State with the talent on hand. As for Braxton's shoulder, we've said this repeatedly. The whole staff the last 2 weeks here on Bucknuts has been saying, we're concerned about Braxton. I remember going to practice and seeing him throwing these just little lollipops. Didn't seem right. And they talked about minor scope surgery in February. All we got out of it was seeing Braxton continually delayed. Something was up this whole time, and his shoulder, I don't believe, was ever right. And having seen, you don't just randomly tear your labrum or whatever it is that happened with him. Your arm doesn't just fall out. Something has to happen. His shoulder was never fixed properly the first time, and now it's going to cost him the season. The only bright side of that is that with him having missed all of spring football, with him having missed almost all of fall camp, all those reps that would have gone to Braxton Miller have been split equally between Cardale Jones and J.T. Barrett. So now you have 2 quarterbacks that have essentially treated this job like as a competition, and Braxton Miller wasn't even there. So if he's going to miss the season, it's best that we know now, 2 weeks before the year starts, and it's best to do it in a scenario where our backups have had the opportunity to prepare as starters. So it could be a lot worse in terms of preparation time and in terms of having our backups getting ready to play for the season.
I'm trying to picture 2015, and I can't picture either scenario. I can't picture Braxton going against what he said and going to the NFL for a number of reasons. First and foremost is that the NFL doesn't have a desire for quarterbacks that already had question marks who are now coming off of major shoulder surgery, 2 shoulder surgeries. There's not going to be a market for Braxton Miller in the NFL. I think he will come back for his 5th-year senior season, or at least he'll try. But what if J.T. Barrett has a good year this year? And I think J.T. Barrett will at least have a good year. Having a great year as a redshirt freshman will be tough sledding. I know the last 2 Heisman Trophy winners were redshirt freshmen. I get that, but those guys might be more the exception to the rule. But if J.T. Barrett has a good year, Bax, beats Michigan State, wins the Big Ten championship, maybe falls short of the 4-game playoff, let's say, but still has a good season, plays well, the team plays well, how do you then bench him next year? And then again, you could flip that around. How could you not start Braxton Miller, who is the 2-time Big Ten Player of the Year? It just presents an interesting dichotomy. I guess it's a problem you want to have, but look ahead to 2015. Are you buying that Braxton Miller will be able to come back, that he will come back as a 5th-year senior? And what happens if J.T. Barrett has a good year this year?
Well, I think we have to look at it this simple. Braxton Miller was not going to get drafted high in the NFL draft this year fully healthy, so that's why he came back. And now he has a shoulder injury? Braxton Miller will not be going to the NFL next year unless somebody convinces him that it's in his better interests to not get hit again in college and risk another injury. But I'm of the opinion that he's not drafted this year, even if he rehabs his shoulder and doesn't play. Braxton Miller will probably go undrafted or be a very late 7th-round pick. So for him, he has no draft status at this point because of the injury and because of the question marks about him as a thrower. And let's be honest, Braxton Miller had a lot to prove still as a quarterback, not as a great runner in college who was one of the more dynamic people with the ball in his hands. So it's not like we're talking about a guy who was a first-round pick until he hurt his shoulder kind of kid. Now, I think what's going to be very interesting to see is that if he does come back, let's say J.T. Barrett has a great year, how does Urban handle that? I mean, Braxton Miller is obviously a special player. What if J.T. Barrett proves to be a special player too? That's going to make things very, very interesting. And from an Ohio State perspective, it is, in some respects, the best of both worlds if J.T. Barrett can step up this year and prove what he's made of. I mean, let's say Barrett goes out and beats Michigan like you're talking about. Let's say Barrett goes out and wins the Big Ten. And I have to think if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, they're going to have a chance of making the playoffs. Well, then, regardless who starts the year after, Ohio State has a guy in J.T. Barrett who would have 3 years of eligibility left after this year as a proven commodity at a high level. So a lot's riding on J.T. Barrett. There's a bunch of implications, though, if Braxton does come back. I mean, aside from shrinking the recruiting class next year by 1, you're going to have to consider this Cardale Jones transfer if Braxton Miller's coming back. If you get to sit the bench forever. I'm sure Cardale Jones is probably pushing right now behind the scenes to make sure he starts. I hope this doesn't cause a split in the team. Because let's face it, these are two guys from 2 different parts of the country. Cardale Jones is an Ohio guy. There's Glenville guys on this team with him. I'm sure there's some opinions between the team right now on who's going to actually be the starter and who they want to start. Until we see some results on the field, that's going to be an issue too. And then if Braxton comes back, the bottom line is how is Urban Meyer going to handle the situation if he has one very successful starting quarterback and one borderline Heisman caliber quarterback from the year before? It's going to be very interesting. Kind of like the whole Trent Green and Kurt Warner situation in St. Louis in 1999 where Trent Green got hurt in the preseason. Kurt Warner went out and won the stinking Super Bowl. And then they had to trade Trent Green. Can't trade players in college football. So it's going to be very interesting to watch how Urban handles all this.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think, and if Braxton does come back next year, it's not going to be the old Braxton Miller. It's going to be Braxton Miller off of 2 shoulder surgeries, major shoulder surgeries. So he's not necessarily going to be the same player. In fact, he's probably not going to be the same player.
He wouldn't have been this year, Dave. I mean, let's be honest. This year he wouldn't have been the same player. Braxton Miller wasn't going to run the ball 20 times a game, more than maybe once or twice in an enormous game this year. Braxton Miller's whole point this year was to have his Troy Smith moment where he ran the ball a heck of a lot less, distributed it more among the much improved set of skill players that we have, and showed that he could be a quote-unquote real quarterback, a NFL quarterback, the standard I can throw the ball to quarterback. Braxton Miller's running ability has never been questioned. It's his ability to stay on the field, and it's his ability to complete the mid-range passes and passes that require a lot of touch. Those are Braxton's biggest.
I still think this year in big games, still going to plan on using Braxton a lot in the running game, but I think in some of the lesser games, they were going to try and use kind of a Troy Smith. Troy hardly ran the ball at all as a senior, but I think even including in big games, Troy hardly ran the ball. I think in big games, Braxton still would have ran the ball a lot this year. They used that as too much of a crutch. Last year, no better example than the 4th and 2 play against Michigan State. You have Carlos Hyde, who averages 7 yards a carry.
Damn ball to Hyde. Same for the Orange Bowl, too.
We'll never live that down. And you can say it's Jeff Hireman's fault that he missed a block, or you could say it's the coach's fault for not running Carlos Hyde. I tend to think it's the latter. Yeah, Hireman missed the block. Players got to play, but we'll see what happens. I'm bummed about Braxton backs, but I'm excited at the same time to see what J.T. Barrett can do. The J.T. Barrett era will be here in about a week, assuming he will be the starting quarterback against Navy. About a week and a half away, the J.T. Barrett era will begin, and he might be a 4-year starting quarterback. It's kind of exciting to think about. And for those out there who want to get to know more about J.T. Barrett, we got a bunch of stuff on the site. I did a story yesterday breaking down Barrett, so you can read that. We also have a 2-minute video that we posted late last night that shows all 15 of Barrett's completions in the spring game. You won't want to miss that. And then later today, Urban Meyer has not spoken since Braxton Miller's injury. We're going to interview Urban Meyer after practice around noon today. They're practicing. The Buckeyes will start practice here pretty soon, and we'll get a chance to interview Urban Meyer after practice. Plus, we're going to interview seniors Duran Grant, Curtis Grant, and Jeff Hireman. So look for a story plus video on what Urban Meyer has to say on the site early this afternoon, and we'll have coverage of what the players have to say as well on the site. Thanks to the People's Champ, Matt Baxendale. Thanks to all the listeners out there. Take it away, best damn band in the land.